several hospitals over the years, but nothing comes close to what happened during my time at a small geriatric hospital about 30 minutes from my house. And even now, when I think about it, I still get chills because I cannot explain what I saw that night. And I'm not sure I ever will. At the time, I had only been working there for a couple of weeks, and I was assigned to the graveyard shift, which meant long silent hours and almost no sleep. And that particular night, I was running on negative energy, barely functioning but still responsible for an entire Alzheimer's ward filled with patients who drifted in and out of reality. Most of them loved me. I was in my 20s, and I think my presence grounded them in some way. Like I reminded them of a daughter or granddaughter, someone who connected them to the present moment instead of the confusion inside their minds. But one patient, Lena, was different. It was my first night taking care of her, and from the moment I walked into her room, she kept telling me about a man dressed in black standing in the corner watching her and smiling while voices whispered to her from the walls. Now, I have worked with dementia patients before, and I understand hallucinations can feel very real to them, so I stayed calm. I held her hand and reassured her that she was safe, that no one else was in the room, and that I was just a call button away. Her roommate had already asked for the curtain to be closed because Lena wouldn't stop talking about the man, and by 11, most of the ward was asleep except for her. Every time she called me in, she was terrified, staring at the same corner of the room, describing the same figure, tall, dressed completely in black, smiling without blinking. Eventually, after a lot of reassurance, she finally drifted off to sleep, and once the ward grows quiet during those hours, time feels strange, like it moves backwards, like the building itself is holding its breath. Around 1 in the morning, I was alone in the linen room, stocking my cart. The door was closed, and the hospital was dead silent when I suddenly heard something behind me. I turned around expecting another nurse, but there was no one there. And as I faced the shelves again, I felt it. A hand, not a brush, not a light touch. A firm, heavy hand gripping my shoulder. I jumped and screamed, spinning around, but the room was empty. I stepped into the hallway, and it was just as silent. No nurses, no patients, no movement. Trying to convince myself it was exhaustion playing tricks on me, I finished stocking my cart and turned toward the door, and that's when I saw him. Standing on the other side of the small glass window in the door was a tall man dressed completely in black, staring directly at me and smiling, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. My body gave out, and I collapsed to the floor, screaming at the top of my lungs, and within seconds, he was gone. Just gone, like he had never been there. Other nurses rushed in, asking what happened, and when I told them about the man in black, they looked at me like I had lost my mind. We searched the entire ward, every hallway, every room, every stairwell, and there was no one. My screams had woken Lena, and when I entered her room, she looked panicked, saying, "He's here. He's angry. You made him angry." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely speak, but I asked her one question. Was he smiling? Her expression changed, completely sharper, more focused than I had seen all night. "How did you know?" she whispered, and then she started screaming, "Get me out of here. He's coming." I was transferred to another ward immediately, and I left early that night shaking. The next day, I texted the head nurse and told her my next shift would be my last because I could not step foot in that building again. I have never experienced hallucinations before, and I understand sleep deprivation can cause strange things, but nothing can explain the feeling of that hand on my shoulder, and nothing can explain how the man I saw matched Lena's description exactly. To this day, I do not know who or what was standing behind that glass, but I know one thing: Lena wasn't imagining him. 3 years ago, I almost died, and what scares me the most isn't how close I came to it, but the voices I heard inside my own house while it was happening, because to this day, I still don't know which parts were illness and which parts might have been real. I live in South Florida, and at the time there wasn't any outbreak or warning about anything serious going around. So when I started getting headaches, I assumed it was stress or dehydration, but within 24 hours, the pain became unbearable. It felt like someone was tightening a metal band around my skull and twisting it slowly while everything around me became foggy and distant. I was nauseous, exhausted, confused, and I could barely keep my eyes open, yet I couldn't sleep either. Because every time I closed my eyes, the pounding in my head intensified. My husband was at work that afternoon and I was alone in the house, lying in bed, trying not to throw up when I heard it. A child's voice from downstairs, clearly calling out, "Mom, we don't have children." At first I thought maybe it came from outside or from a television somewhere, but it sounded like it came from inside my living room, like a child standing at the bottom of the stairs looking up at me. I forced myself out of bed, gripping the wall for balance, and stepped into the hallway, looking down the staircase, calling my husband's name, even though I knew he wasn't home. And of course, there was no response, just silence stretching through the house. The pain from standing was so intense that I had to lie back down, but only minutes later, I heard it again, this time softer. "Hello." That was the moment I realized something was seriously wrong. I called my husband in a panic, telling him I was hearing voices and that I thought I was losing my mind, and he could hear in my voice that this wasn't normal, so he left work immediately to take me to the hospital. While waiting for him, I tried to change out of my pajamas, but I became so nauseous that I ran to the bathroom, and as I was kneeling there getting sick, I heard another voice outside the bathroom door. I couldn't make out exactly what it said, but it sounded like whispering just beyond the frame, as if someone was standing in the hallway listening. By the time my husband got home, I could barely walk, and at the hospital they moved quickly, running tests and asking questions, and within hours I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis. The doctor later told me that if I had waited much longer, it could have been fatal. They started intravenous antibiotics immediately and admitted me for observation. That night around 10, my husband left to get some sleep, and I drifted off not long after, and that's when things became even more disturbing. I dreamed that my ex-husband was standing over my hospital bed staring down at me, his face half in shadow, telling me how much he hated my current husband and how he wished he could kill him. And in the dream, he kept touching my forehead gently, almost affectionately, while whispering threats. When I woke up, the room was dark, and I felt groggy, like I was caught between sleep and reality, and that's when I noticed something that didn't make sense. There was a chair pulled up close to my bed, positioned like someone had been sitting there watching me. It had not been there when my husband left. The next morning, I told the nurse about the vivid dream, and she looked confused before telling me that it wasn't a dream. She said someone claiming to be my cousin David had visited me late the previous night. David is my ex-husband's name. My stomach dropped. I explained that I had no cousins in the state, and the doctor later told me that the antibiotics combined with the infection could have caused delirium, making it difficult to distinguish dreams from reality. But here's the part that still unsettles me. I texted David asking why he visited and how he even knew I was hospitalized, and he replied that he had heard through mutual friends and only came to check on me, denying any threats and insisting I must have imagined the rest. I never told my husband about the threats I heard because I still don't know if they were real or created by my fevered mind. The voices in my house stopped once the antibiotics began working, and I recovered fully within a week. But sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I still remember how clearly that child's voice echoed from downstairs. And I wonder if meningitis hadn't forced me to the hospital that day, would I still be hearing it? If you ever decide to explore an abandoned building at night with someone you just met, make sure you trust them completely, because the only thing scarier than an empty hospital in the dark is realizing you are not alone inside it. A few years ago, I matched with a girl named Francesca on Tinder, and from the start, she seemed different from anyone else I had talked to. She had a sleeve of tattoos, red highlights in her hair, and this fearless energy about her, like she was always chasing adrenaline. One of her pictures was taken on the rooftop of an abandoned hospital on the edge of town, and when I asked her about it, she casually told me it was her favorite place to explore at night, and that it was easy to get inside if you knew where to go. Instead of grabbing drinks like a normal first date, she suggested we explore it together, and I said yes. I picked her up from her house, and during the 20-minute drive, we talked and laughed like we had known each other for years, which made what happened later even more surreal. We parked on a dead-end street, hidden by thick bushes, and walked about 5 minutes to the hospital property, hopping a small barrier before jogging across the massive open parking lot toward a broken basement window she claimed was the safest entrance. Climbing through that window felt like crossing into another world. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and decay, and the only light came from our phone flashlights cutting thin beams through the darkness. She moved confidently through the hallways, like she had memorized every turn, leading us upstairs through a stairwell that echoed with every step. On the first floor, we heard it. A loud metallic bang somewhere down the corridor. We both froze and turned off our lights, immediately standing in complete darkness, listening to the building breathe around us. Another sound followed closer. This time like a door slamming shut. I whispered, asking if other people usually came here, and she admitted sometimes, but not often. Then we heard footsteps, not random settling noises, clear, deliberate footsteps coming from the stairwell we had just used. We ran up several flights before slowing down, convinced it was probably other explorers, but something felt wrong because we hadn't seen any other flashlights and no one would be walking around that place in total darkness. Eventually, she led us onto a rooftop section, not the very top, but high enough to overlook the parking lot. And after catching our breath, she guided me through a broken window into the ceiling space of a large room. To cross it, we had to walk along narrow wooden planks suspended about 10 feet above the floor below, and I remember thinking if I slipped, I would break something. We made it across and sat on a concrete pillar, letting our legs hang over the edge, trying to calm down. That's when we heard movement directly beneath us, slow, steady footsteps circling. We turned on our flashlights and aimed them downward, and there he was, a man maybe in his 40s, wearing a black beanie, black jacket, black sweatpants, standing directly below us, staring up. He was smiling, not surprised, not confused, just smiling like he had been expecting us. In a deep, calm voice, he said, "Come on down." I asked if he was police, but he ignored the question and repeated, "Come on down," while raising his hand and motioning for us to climb down. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was very wrong. We stood up immediately and began carefully making our way back across the narrow plank, and that's when he moved quickly, exiting the room below us, clearly heading to intercept us. The calm smile never left his face. We ran through the maze of hallways, our footsteps echoing off the concrete walls, and seconds later, we heard a door slam several floors above us, followed by heavy footsteps pounding down the stairwell. He was chasing us. We sprinted down the opposite stairwell, taking 2 steps at a time, not daring to look back, because if he caught us in that building, no one would hear us. When we reached the basement window, I climbed through, first then turned to help Francesca, terrified that hands would grab her legs at any second. But we made it out. We ran across the parking lot faster than I've ever run in my life, jumped into my car, locked the doors, and didn't speak for nearly a minute, just breathing hard, trying to process what had just happened. We never reported it, and we never went back. And sometimes I think about that smile, because it wasn't the smile of someone caught trespassing. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing and was hoping we would come down.